The harvester's vase is named, well, literally for the fact that what we're seeing is something related to fertility and the harvest. Now, this is one of the finest examples of surviving relief sculpture from the time, although it was pretty well broken up. In fact, what you see is the top half is more or less the original vase, and then everything beneath those figures is lost. What you see is a restoration. And you can see that by the difference in texture and in color. A restoration is not meant to make something look original. It's meant to make something look as complete as possible while making it very apparent which parts are original and which ones are not. And this is only 5 inches in diameter. It's a very small piece. We also believe it was covered in gold leaf. Why gold leaf? Well, it would have been a valuable piece in some way. And again, gold has its own connotations and meanings. And what we're seeing is a harvesting scene, maybe a sowing scene, but the materials that they're carrying appears to be harvest. Those large forks would be for, picking up wheat that's been cut, that sort of thing. And the imagery is very similar to what we've seen in some of the Egyptian imagery or some of the Mesopotamian imagery, where we have people making offerings to gods. And the representation of the figures is rather unique. So when we look at them, when we look at the harvesters, who we can assume to be farmers, we have sort of sinewy shoulders, we have people who are muscular, but muscular in that very wiry way that you get only from physical labor rather than, for example, going to the gym. And this makes the representation of the figure rather unique. It captures movement to a degree we have not seen. Even though these are composite view, we're seeing the chest turn towards us, and then we see the bodies moving off to the right with the heads and feet facing to the right. And we know what the crowd is doing. They're singing as they move along, or at least some figures. The one in the center, for example, seems to be singing, making some kind of music as he moves along. There is one figure a little bit more unique than the rest on the far right, and that figure seems to be singled out. He seems to be a priest or someone leading the rest of these peoples. Everyone else seems to be a farmer, but that figure on the right may be a priest leading them to a temple, or maybe leading them from the temple to the fields. So we see an unprecedented depiction of the human form, attempting to portray the underlying form. We see the skeletal structure, for example, with the depiction of the ribs, as we see right here. We see muscular tension in the face. We are starting to see a study of anatomy. They're starting to understand the human body. They're not necessarily dissecting at this point, but they are definitely observing real humans while creating these pieces. And that realism is going to set them apart. It's very different from the Egyptians, where it's sort of a general body form. Here we have a very specific sort of form, that wiry, muscular farmer form that would have been very common to them in this ancient period.